Everyone's buying something nowadays, but have you thought about buying nothing? Well, this right here is the Nothing Phone 1 with a naming scheme that just makes sense. I'll keep it simple. With Gorilla Glass on the front and back, symmetrical bezels, and aluminum frame, the Nothing Phone 1 looks and feels as premium as some flagship Android phones, twice its price. It has a balanced design similar to OnePlus phones and iPhones. By that I mean the phone feels solid throughout, with no hollowness feeling in the body. As for the colors, this phone's available in black or white, and if you want to get it in the States, it'll cost you anywhere between $400 to $600 depending on the storage size and the color of the phone. Now for the transparent back, it's subjective, but I like it. It has a modern design on the front and what I would say a futuristic design on the transparent back with the Glyph interface, which we'll talk more about later on. This phone might not be waterproof, but it is IP53 certified, which means it's protected from dust and can survive from water sprays less than 60 degrees from vertical. So basically you can use this phone by the side of a pool as long as you don't drop it. So overall, the Nothing Phone 1 is a cool looking phone with the build quality of a flagship smartphone. The Nothing Phone 1 has a 6.5-inch 1080p flexible OLED display with a refresh rate of 120 Hz. The flexible part of the display you can't really see, but Nothing took it a step further to curve the bottom of the display to create symmetrical bezels all around. The screen can also get pretty bright, rated for 500 nits of brightness and 1200 nits of peak brightness when viewing HDR content. This phone's screen has been visible in all kinds of lighting conditions. Even though it's a 1080p display, it still looks pretty sharp. I can hardly notice the difference between this and my iPhone 14 Pro Max's screen, which also brings me to this little hole punch camera on the top left side of the screen that I barely notice, unlike some other notches. Overall, it's a good looking display, no complaints here. This phone's running on Nothing OS, which delivers one of the simplest Android experiences. There's literally no bloatware here, and having come from an iPhone 14 Pro Max, I really haven't noticed any major performance difference here. If a clean Android experience is what you seek, then this might be something worth considering. In terms of battery life, the Nothing Phone 1 has a 4500 mAh battery with 33 watt wired charging and 15 watt wireless charging that also supports reverse wireless charging. Charging speed is pretty good. You can get about 50% battery life in about half an hour, and then with the Glyph feature turned on and everything on a day-to-day use, I was comfortably able to get a full day use out of this phone, so about 6 to 8 hours of screen on time. As for the cameras, there's a dual 50 megapixel camera system on the back. There's an ultra wide angle camera on the top with a 114 degree field of view, while the bottom one is the standard main camera with OIS. The Nothing Phone 1 can take some pretty good looking photos and videos. Unlike some other mid-range smartphones, this phone is capable of shooting in 4K at 30 frames per second with both of its cameras. Here's one feature I don't think any other smartphone has, and it's the ability to use the Glyph interface as a fill light. It illuminates close-up subjects pretty well, better than flash at times depending on the lighting condition. Sure, the Nothing Phone 1 might not have a flagship quality camera, but it's definitely good enough to get the job done. As for the performance, the Nothing Phone 1 is powered by a Snapdragon 778G Plus chipset with an octa-core CPU, Adreno 642L for graphics, and either 8 or 12 gigs of RAM depending on your configuration. So far, this phone has been running buttery smooth, pretty much like a flagship device. Like I said earlier, haven't noticed any major performance difference coming from an iPhone 14 Pro Max. Even in gaming, this phone runs pretty much all games available on the Play Store, and it runs it well. When I think about this, it just goes to show how overpowered some smartphones might be and how balanced some other smartphones can be, which in return probably helps bring the price down for consumers. Now, that's also going to depend on the company and what they decide to put on their phones, and I think Nothing has done a pretty good job in understanding and putting the features that most consumers would want on their smartphones while keeping it simple and future-centric. Okay, so the Glyph interface. It's more of a fashion statement than anything else right now. at least for me. Let me know if you actually find the Glyph interface to be useful. But besides the cool patterns of the lights, it's kind of like having the accessibility feature of the flashlight turning on and off whenever you get a phone call or a notification on most smartphones. If you were to use a custom ringtone for a select contact, then you'd need to be able to take a second to decipher the Glyph interface and figure out who's actually calling. So it's just better to look at the caller ID or just know who's calling by hearing the custom ringtone. It shouldn't be the main reason to buy this phone unless you really want this look. Now, here are some things you can currently do with the Glyph interface. You can use it to show a charging meter using the bottom lights. You can also use it as a Google Voice Assistant feedback. Then there's flip to Glyph feature. Here, you flip the phone over and it turns off the sound and only notifies you with the Glyph lights. But the catch here is that the flip to Glyph feature only works on completely flat surfaces. I tried to flip it over on a couch and nothing happened. Here's one cool hidden feature I came across, and it's called music visualization. And all this does is basically have the Glyph lights react in sync to the music or any sound that's coming out of the phone. I hope it doesn't sound like I'm complaining, since this is their first phone. I actually appreciate the Glyph interface and the innovative step they have taken towards the back side of the phone. But here are some features that I think would also be helpful. One of them is being able to selectively use certain portions of the Glyph interface for customizing my notifications. Another one is if it had a sensor to have a glowing effect on the Glyph interface whenever my hands got close to the phone. Also, if the lights could change into a couple of different colors, it would be much easier to distinguish what's what with the color matching notifications. So I was actually looking forward to this, but the lights don't turn on when the screen is facing up. I had the phone on a glass table with the screen facing up, hoping the lights would have a cool glowing effect from the table, but it seems like they don't turn on when the back is facing down. With all that being said, if you want a smartphone with a unique design and a good build quality as well as the Glyph interface coupled with decent cameras and a blow-free near stock Android experience at a reasonable price, then the Nothing Phone 1 might be for you.